I am excited to talk about 3 kings today. Were there really 3 kings?
They named them.
They named them. Do you remember the names?
That's a good question. Right now?
Melkor?
Well,
Very good, very good. Before we get to all that, I want to ask you guys again and remind you guys one more time that this Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we are fasting and praying for vision, for direction, for God to guide us. I don't want to be in charge if God is not with us. If God is not with us, we're going the wrong direction. And I don't want to fight God. Anybody wants to fight God? We know one character in the Bible that wrestled with God. Did he win?
I limped a lot.
He limped a lot. How many wanted a limp? No.
I'm limping.
No. We do not want to wrestle with God. We want to be obedient to what God has for us. So I'm asking you, please fast, please pray. If you can make it here, beautiful. We're going to have something for the children as well. But most importantly, we want to pray. That's going to be our focus. We won't focus on Proverbs, although we need lots of wisdom. That may be a part of our focus, but that's not going to be our main focus. We may read a little bit of scripture, which we will. But our focus is prayer. And fasting doesn't have to be no food at all, which would be great. But some of us work at a restaurant, so that's tough. Some of us like going to restaurants, okay? Or some of us have a good wife that cooks a great meal. We're going to be doing a Daniel's fast. No meats, no sweets, and obviously no alcohol. That's a big no-no. But most importantly, prayer works. How many had an answer to prayer ever in their lifetime? Every hand is up, which is beautiful. God answers prayers. And if you don't have a testimony, talk to me. I'll give you an example of your own testimony. But today we're talking about the Magi, the 3 Kings Day, since today is the 3 Kings Day. By the way, for those of you who have Facebook, please like and share the stories that we share on Facebook. I want to be doing a lot more on Facebook and Instagram, for those who have Instagram. Hashtag CT.church, that's our church Instagram account. Also on Facebook, Living Waters Fellowship Church, or CT.church. I was going to show a video, which I totally forgot about, which I made. But maybe we'll show it at the end. Hope at the end. How many need hope? How about people out there, how many of them need hope? Okay, so let's look at the tradition. What are some of the common misconceptions? And most importantly, what does the Bible text say about the kings or the Magi? And for this, we're going to turn our Bibles to Matthew chapter 2, the first 12 verses. And yes, we will read all 12 verses at once. And I will try to contain myself and not intervene with the Bible scripture while I'm reading it. You hold me to that. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. I will not stop. When he called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem of Judea," they replied. "For this is what the prophets has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose, went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw a child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. That is the biblical account. And I believe that's exactly how it happened. So who were these Magi? You know, when I was young, or younger, because I'm still, old now, I always wonder about because I heard Magi, magician, and the kings, and I was totally confused. I'm sure that the kids today have Google, so they got it all. Because Google knows it all. Doesn't Google know it all?
Not sure about that.
I wonder if we should get them as a supporter. But I Googled the word Magi. As a matter of fact, I went to the Strong's Dictionary, which is also on Google. Which you can find on Google. That's it. And magos is the original word, because I know you guys are Greek scholars, so magos, did I say it right? Sounds right. Good enough. Magos is a name given by the Babylonians, Chaldeans, Medes, Persians, and others to the wise men, teachers, priests, physicians, astrologers, seers, interpreters of dreams, and etc. So, who were these Magi, these Magos? Well, we know that at the time when Daniel was taken into captivity, where was he? Babylon. So, Magos is a word that Babylonians used, Chaldeans used, the Medes, the Persians, and others. So it was a fairly common word back then. It's not like we have lots of wise men now, right? Remember the joke that I told the kids? A virgin birth, I can accept. But 3 wise men?
Yeah, we got a lot of them.
We got a couple of wise men in the church.
Yep.
That's all I'm going to say. You ladies are lucky. Now, if we go back to Daniel chapter 2, I just want to trace back the history of Daniel and how Daniel became the chief among the Magi, or the wise men of Babylon. We're going to start with just reading the first 3 verses in Daniel chapter 2. In the 2nd year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His mind was troubled, and he could not sleep. Now, how many can concur with that? So the king summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed. Stay right there for a second. Now, you see, the translation here says magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers. Yes, in Babylon, all of those were there. When they came in and stood before the king, he said to them, "I had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means." Now, usually when we have a dream that's bothering us, usually when we have a dream that we remember in the morning, which is very unlikely that we do, usually that dream is important, that we should find out what it means. But you can scroll down to verse 12 very slowly if you'd like, and you can read along, because I want to paraphrase this really quick. When we have a dream and we tell somebody, I had a dream, we usually say, well, what was in your dream? But King Nebuchadnezzar, he was a smart guy. He didn't remember. Smart guy, right? Wise guy. He said, I want you to tell me what I dreamed and tell me what it means. Now, we know that's impossible because only God can tell you what's in your heart, what's in your mind, right? How can a couple of sorcerers, a couple of enchanters, a couple of astrologers tell the king what he dreamed? They can't. So, keep scrolling, beautiful, thank you. So, as he is talking to them and he says, well, if you don't tell me what it is, I'm going to kill you. They said, well, king, nobody knows. Only God himself knows what you dreamed. And he says, well, if you claim to have all the superpowers, why don't you go to your God and have him reveal to you what I dreamed? They say, king, that's impossible. That is impossible. And, he got a little upset with them. Well, let's read verse number 12, how upset he got with them. Let's go down to verse 12. This made the king so angry and furious that he ordered the execution of all wise men of Babylon. Now, you're wondering why we have no wise men? That's the reason. So the decree was issued and put the wise men to death. The men were sent to look for Daniel and his friends to put them to death. Keep scrolling until verse 47. But see, Daniel was wise, but he was also filled with the Spirit of God. And he tells the man that was about to kill him, he says, listen, can I make a deal with you? Listen, I think he bribed him somehow. I don't know how he did it, but he was a wise man. So he knew exactly what to say to this man, because obviously God gave him the words to say. And he says, can I have a night to pray to my God and to see if my God will give me an answer that the king is looking for? And he says, well, my job is to kill you. So if you leave the room, you're gone. If you don't give me an answer in the morning, you're gone. Just think about it. How much more forward will you be in your prayer life if you knew once you get off your knees, there is no answer, you're gone. Now that's some stimulation. They were fasting and praying. Now, we're not in that situation yet. But I am asking you, I am begging you, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, here's some motivation for you. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, come to church. Let's pray together before we get to that point where if we get off our knees, we may be gone. So him and his friends, they had a very tough decision to make. Pray or die. Pray or die. I'm sure all of us would find ourselves on our knees begging for our lives. Because, mind you, at this point, Daniel and his friends, they had some titles already. They had a pretty good life. And I'm sure they did not want to lose their heads. So if we go down to verse 47, this goes to God answering Daniel and his friends. And and Daniel told his dream, the Nebuchadnezzar's dream to Nebuchadnezzar, and he gave him what it means. And verse 47 tells this: the king said to Daniel, "Surely your God is the God of gods, and the Lord of kings, and the revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery." And mind you, this was a big mystery because the king didn't remember what he saw, but it was bothering him. Then the king placed Daniel in a high position and lavished him many gifts, and lavished many gifts on him. I think, gold, frankincense, myrrh. Because this is 3 Kings Day, remember. He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed him in charge of all its wise men. That's where we get some wise men back. Moreover, at Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego administrators over the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court. Keep that on for just a second, please. Now Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel's friends, with Daniel, they became the Magi, or the wise men of Babylon. Now, let's just say this. If a Christian man or Christian woman becomes a ruler in any country, does that country, or will that country change? Yes. Yes. Now, Daniel, along with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, became literally rulers of that country, minus the king. But the king was so in love with Daniel and his friends and what God did through them that he put him in charge. And that's where we get the wise men that came to see Jesus. They studied what Daniel and his friends wrote. Now we know we have the book of Daniel. I'm sure there are other writings that we do not have that Daniel and his friends left, prophecies and other writings that they left for the wise men to study. Now, astrology as we know it today is not the same thing that it was back then. How many ever read the horoscopes? Well, here's the thing about horoscopes. If you want some horrors in your life, read them. If you want God to rule and reign in your life, stop. Ask for forgiveness and drop all that nonsense. Because the starry hosts, that was we call them, right? They tell a story of salvation. And if we try to say, I'm Leo, or I'm this, or Scorpion, or whatever, and we don't know the real meaning behind it, we can be very easily deceived, and we can have our lives turned upside down just because somebody thinks something. We have the Bible. Now, many people would try to disprove the Bible. Have anyone ever succeeded? They have succeeded to become Christians.
Right.
Can you believe that? Somebody goes out to disprove the Bible. Each time, as a matter of fact, they go to disprove the Bible. God uses that as a desire for them to learn about the Bible. Now, Daniel and his friends left lots of writings. That's my personal opinion, and that's what I did in my studies. I found some writings that Daniel might have left for the Magi, or the wise men, astrologers of that day and age, to study. All that being said, Magi, or wise men, Babylon, we know that also the Chaldeans, the Medes, and the Persians ruled that region. So all of them would have copied Daniel's writings. So we understand that those Magi, or the wise men, came from Daniel. Or at least we're reading the book of Daniel and other writings, other sacred writings of Daniel. And obviously the Torah and the rest of it, right? Now, we all know that there's always people mixing other stuff in. When our country was founded, and I absolutely love our country, when our country was founded, it was founded on what? The biblical principles. And until recently, until very, very recently, did I say very, very recently? Until very, very recently, it was never disputed that our country was founded on biblical principles. But nowadays, well, we know some that are trying to make up history. Well, if Iran and Iraq and all the other countries can make up their, and Palestine can make up their history, why can't we change ours? And that's where we have a standard. The Bible, our Bible is our standard. And it's a standard for the whole world, as a matter of fact. And once we move away from the standard, what do we get? We get people questioning stuff. It's okay to question the Bible. The Bible is not afraid of being questioned.
Right.
But if you take away the facts are the facts. And we have one person in Congress who say, well, the facts are not the facts. Well, they're either the fact or they're not the fact. You know, you can't say the facts are not the facts.
Yeah.
Well, there's many of them, and we gotta pray for them. But anyways, when we take away the standard, we are left with nothing. We literally throw away our entire lives for nothing, unless we go back to the standard. So, how many kings were there? Or how many wise men were there? What have Neil sing? We three kings of Orient are. Yeah, come on. Let's sing. Everybody sing. We three kings of Orient are, bearing gifts we traverse afar. Fields and fountains, more and mountains, following yonder star. So how many kings were there? What is that? At least three. At least three. I'm just going with the tradition. Now, if you look at the Roman Catholic Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Anglican Communion Church, the Lutheran Church, all of them have deified or sanctified three men. And we spoke about them just a second ago. Melchior, Caspar, and Balthazar. Now, it is believed that Melchior was a Persian scholar. And what gift did he bring? He brought gold, or he gifted gold. Too bad Ron's not here. This was perfect for Ron. Caspar was an Indian scholar. He was the youngest, the beardless man. Mind you, Ron has this big beard. It would have been perfect. He was just sitting there. I'm going to pick on Greg. He was beardless. Sorry, Greg.
All right.
What did Caspar bring? Frankincense. Yes, we're going in that order. Balthazar is believed to be a Babylonian scholar, and he brought myrrh. Again, the Bible doesn't tell us their names. The Bible doesn't tell us how many there were. But, as I told the children, I'm going to tell you the same exact thing. Well, let's read Matthew 2. Let's skip the first two. That's fine. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. Now, keep that up for a second. Verse 3. If there was three men, some loony bins, come to the president and say, well, there's a new king. What do you do with three men that just come and pretend that there's a new king? Throw them in the loony bin, right? No big deal. But for King Herod to be disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him, there might have been more than 3. Now, even if there was 3 kings, let's just call them 3 celebrities. Let's go. Since we live in the 21st century, each rapper or each famous person has an entourage. How big is their entourage? 50, 20 people, right? So if there was three celebrities, now mind you, we believe that they were from 3 different countries, all in the same region, all in the same region, all around Babylon. There's 3 of them, and each one of them had at least 20 people of entourage, so there's 60. So would it be safe to say there was about 100, maybe more? Now mind you, back then, there was no paved roads, so stop complaining about 91. It's not that bad. We don't need any tolls on there, but it's not that bad. Listen, if you live, if you ever travel to Russia, Ukraine, not so much Belarus anymore, but the former USSR, most of it, in the rural areas, there are bandits around there. Nowadays, if you saw a caravan of people traveling, wouldn't that be prime target? And now think about it. Just go there. Just go there with me for a second. The Babylon and Jerusalem is at least 800 miles apart. Now let's add on the other 2 kings. They came together, and we're not sure if they met on the way or what have you. But let's just say they met on the way. So there's at least 1,000 miles to travel. I'll go even further. How far? And I love Google. How far can a camel travel in a day? Come on. This is common knowledge. No, it's not.
About 40 miles?
About 40 miles is when they're loaded, yes. But when they just have one rider, and they're really speeding down the desert, they can go from 80 to 120 miles per day. Now they're carrying what? Gold, frankincense, myrrh, supplies, food, a couple of pairs of changing clothes. Huh? Human weight. So they were traveling 1,000 miles, going top speed 40 miles per day. Now, this is a dangerous question. How many of you ladies will let your men leave to go on a 1,000-mile journey? Mind you, at 40 miles per day, that would take at least 25 days each way. So that's a month there and a month back. That's on a good, clear skies, no desert sun, no sandstorm. So that's at least, a 3-month journey, right? 25 there, on a good day, 25 days there, and 25 days back. So that's 2 months and a month just for ha-has. Now, when you travel, how many have traveled anywhere? Come on, I know all you guys have traveled. Even I have traveled. Let's go from here to New Jersey is about 4 hours, right? Well, 3 hours to the tip of New Jersey. How many actually gotten there in 3 hours besides me? See, we have a speeder back there and a speeder there. They have admitted it. Usually, well, if you're traveling with children, it takes you twice as long. How many know that? Say amen. Some of us are nodding our heads because some of us have taken a station wagon for a trip, right? It took you a little longer? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So, given all those stipulations, they were gone for at least 3 months, maybe even longer. Now, ladies, how many of you would let your man go for at least 3 months, knowing,
For 3 months.
I told you this is dangerous territory.
Send me a letter.
Oh geez, where am I going with this? So they were gone, and all because they saw a star?
Yeah, right.
Well, honey, I was reading this book that Daniel left us. Remember Daniel, the one that saw a dream? He left us a couple more books. He was the wisest man alive. I'm sure their wives weren't too excited about letting them go to see a star. Nobody has ever seen a star born, right? Now, I'm not going to get into the details of what we believe the star was, or although I probably should. Maybe that's a subject for another time. Now, they followed a star that they believed represented a birth of a new king, because of some prophecies foretold way back when. And I know all you ladies were so excited to get rid of your husbands for a couple of months. But I don't believe that was the case here. Some of them say, well, you might want to reread that book again, take some time. What do you think it took 2 years to get to Jesus? Some of them were rereading the prophecies, right?
Right.
That's just my spin on it. What can I say? But listen, back to the Bible text. Let's go back to Luke chapter 2, verses 8 through 16. And as we're reading this, you're going to say, this is the shepherds. Why are you looking at the shepherds when we're talking about the Magi here? But just bear with me for a mere second, and let's see if I can prove to you the timing. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. And the angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. Listen, if in the middle of the night if you see a big light, you might be scared too. Sometimes in the middle of the night, something falls, like, what was that? Can you imagine a big light right at you? You'd be scared. But the angel of the Lord said to them, do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all people. Today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly host appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest heavens, and on earth peace, and to those on whom his favor rests. When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about. So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. So where was Jesus?
In the manger.
In what town?
Bethlehem.
In Bethlehem. So he was in Bethlehem, lying in a manger. Now let's turn to Matthew 2:11. Now this passage is talking about the wise men. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Then they opened up the treasures and presented him with gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Leave that up there for a second. On coming to the manger,
No?
the house. Here's my story. You know how I like to tell you guys stories, right? We know that Mary and Joseph Joseph was from Bethlehem originally. He was born there. But because Bethlehem had too many builders, he was forced to go to another town to find work. So he moved. There he found himself a wife. And when Caesar made a decree that all men had to go back to their towns where they were born to register, him and Mary came there. And when they couldn't find any place for themselves in the inn, they had to stay in a manger. But check this out, they did not stay in a manger for very long. Because approximately 2 years later, or at least a year or two later, we see them in the house. And just go with me for a second. This is a conversation between Mary and Joseph. Joseph to Mary. Mary, isn't this place great? I gave birth to a son, the Son of God, in a manger. I know, but look at the people around here. Weren't they friendly? What do you mean? I mean the shepherds. The shepherds came to visit us. Are you crazy? Mary, how about we buy a house here and live here? Kind of happened like that, right? Is that the story that you get from reading this? Well, 2 years later, 2 years later, they're still in Bethlehem. How else could it happen? Pastor Earl, how else could it happen? That's about right? Give or take? Well, let's just go with that, okay? So 2 years later, the Magi, the wise men, come. And on coming to the house, they saw the child and his mother Mary. It doesn't mention anything about Joseph. Isn't that the case always? Get rid of the dad. They bowed down and worship who? Mary? They worship Jesus. Let us go there. Do you think by now Mary figured out that she actually has the Son of God? Do you possibly think that she bowed down with the wise men and worshiped Jesus? I think so.
Yes, definitely.
Remember, there is no mediator between God and men, but who?
Jesus.
But Jesus. Now we worship who?
Jesus.
Jesus. The wise men worship who?
Jesus.
Mary was there. She gave birth. She was the vessel to bring forth the child of God. But that's where it ended.
That's right.
God uses each one of us as a vessel. But we don't take the credit. We can't, and we should not take the credit. And if somebody puts the credit on you, tell them, no. It was God working through me
Amen.
to bless you, or we'll do whatever we did. The wise men, and you guys are wise for coming to church this morning. You worship Jesus.
Right.
On coming to the house, they saw the child and his mother, Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him, Jesus. I would have put a big H right there for him.
Right.
Excuse me. Where's this candy here? The Aunt has left me. No more yelling. That's why we have a microphone.
And a volume switch.
That's why he's turning me down. Now, before I go to the next part, I want to ask you one question. How far away is Jerusalem from Bethlehem? About 5 miles. About 5 miles. How far did the wise man travel? About 1,000 miles. We don't know the exact origin of where they started. We know where they ended. But if you take into account all the things that I have said here, and you could do research on your own, you don't have to take everything that I say perfect. But there's only approximately 5 miles. How far is 5 miles? How many travel 5 miles today? Most of us. You guys are wise men or women.
But no camel.
No kidding.
No camel. How many want camel? Let's go back to Matthew chapter 2. I know it's not in the notes, but let's go back there in a second. Verse number... Let's go to verse number 2. Matthew 2:2. And we're going to go down to verse 5. Well, actually, you'll go down, let's go from 2, no, start with 2, we're going to read down to 6. Let's go with 1. What the heck? Let's go with 1. I'm making them work today. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, verse 2, and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." Hold it, go back, 1 second. Wise men came to Jerusalem, and they asked the king, "Where is this new king?" Why? Because we have come to worship him. Next verse. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. Next verse. When he called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them, where the Messiah was to be born? In Bethlehem of Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Did the people of Israel, go back to verse 4. Did the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, did they know where the Messiah was to be born?
Yes.
Yes. Now, if I'm telling you that this is the house of God, and you are wise for coming here, they knew where the Messiah was to be born, but they were too busy. They had soccer practice, they had TV show to watch, they couldn't get off of Instagram. But the wise men, wise people, went to see him. Those who knew where he was born did not go to visit him. 5 miles, maybe even less. We don't know exactly where Jesus was born, where Jesus was living. We know in Bethlehem, when you say Windsor Locks, from here to end of Windsor Locks, that's like 2 miles. Who knows, with this 2 mile region where you live? Or maybe you live in Suffield. It's also part of Windsor Locks. We'll call it that, right? But the people's chief priests and teachers of the law would not go and visit the newborn king. They knew where he was born. They knew who he was, but they refused to go. Now I want to go to Luke 2:52. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. I have a question for you this morning. I have a couple of questions for you guys this morning. Well, let me praise you first. You are wise to coming to church this morning. I'll say it again. You are wise for coming to church this morning. And some of you traveled more than 5 miles. I used to travel 30 minutes to come here. For 13 years or so that I've been coming here, I've traveled every single day for over 30 minutes to be here. So you are wise to be here this morning. But I have a question. A couple of questions. If Jerusalem and Bethlehem were 5 miles apart, if a couple of wise men, even if there were three, but I know there were hundreds with their entourage and protection and everything else, there were hundreds of people coming to worship a newborn king. Why didn't the chief priests, why didn't the teachers of the law, why didn't the Pharisees and Sadducees and every other sees, why didn't they go see the king? The newborn king, the Messiah. Because they were empowered, they didn't care. They did not want to see this somebody new. They were afraid of Herod. You know what Herod did to his own son? He didn't want a new king. He killed his own son. Now, if you are a religious person and you know that God is moving in this place and you are wise to be here, why aren't you coming here? Why would you stay home? Provided you're not sick, provided you're feeling okay. But listen, if you're not feeling okay, if you're sick and contagious, please don't get everybody else sick. But if you're feeling a little bit down, if you feel a little sick, isn't this the place? Isn't this the healing room?
Yeah.
Isn't God moving in this place?
Yes.
Then why don't we have more people here? And that's one of the things I want to pray and fast about. God, we want to see more people saved for your kingdom. God, we want to see more people saved. More people following you.
Yes.
We want our country to follow you.
Yes.
My next question. Put Luke 2:53 back on. This is Luke chapter 2. And it says, and Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, and favor with God and men. My question for you today is, are you growing in wisdom? Are you growing in favor with God and with those around you? Are you fighting those around you? Or are you trying to win their favor? Because if you're fighting with them, listen, if you're fighting with somebody, they don't want to deal with you. They don't want to go to church with you. They don't want to do nothing with you. But if you're trying to get their favor, invite them over for lunch. Dinner? How about pizza? Who doesn't like pizza? We all love pizza. I love pizza. But Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, and favor with God and men. If you try to please God, most of the people around you will be pleased. There'll be a couple that are not happy with you. That's okay. And my last question for you this morning is this. Is Jesus, who was born in you, is he still in that stable? Or have you moved to a house? Are you growing yourself? When Jesus was born, there was no room for him. And I know most of you guys here are Christians. And you have opened up your heart to receive him. And when he comes to your heart, it's literally a stable. It's the lowliest of low places. But are you growing? Are you growing in favor with God? Are you growing in wisdom? Or are you keeping that stable? You should build a house of praising yourself. Listen, Mary gathered all the things that were said to her, and she put them in her heart. She put them in her heart, and her heart grew. This was her son. And we're going to finish out with Mary, Did You Know? The same song that we started with. But today my question is Jesus growing in your heart? Is it still a stable? If it's still a stable, you have time to grow. If it's just a stable, let him grow in you. Let's worship together. Let's stand and worship together.